friends, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my January reading vlog. So January is going to be quite a interesting month. I don't know quite how my month is going to go, so we're gonna take it as it comes. But I am currently reading The Letters of Vincent van Gogh. This is a carryover from December. I am 235 pages in. I don't really have too many new, fresh, and interesting ideas. This obviously explores Vincent's mind very well because it's literally letters written from him to his brother. But he is a frustrating person, or he was a frustrating person. He's very hypocritical, and he's just flawed like every human is, and it can be frustrating to read these struggles that are self-imposed, seemingly. So I'm making my way through this, and then I'm also making my way more slowly through the Journals of Sylvia Plath. I am still on page 88 like I was at the end of my last vlog. These journals are from Sylvia Plath's life in college, and I think it led not straight up to when she committed suicide, but roughly around that time. This is incredibly emotional and hard to read. She is, again, another very complex person who vacillates between thoughts of suicide and a lot of self-hatred to a vigor and a love for life and art, and really profound thoughts on women's place in society, war, the state of the world at that time. So it's a very heavy read, and I'm definitely reading these two things pretty slowly, just because they're both pretty emotional. And I was rereading Chain of Iron in conjunction with these because they're quite heavy, but I finished my reread, so I don't have anything to like bounce off of these to, you know, make it a little bit easier. I have The Last Housewife as an audiobook. I haven't quite started it yet, but I have, you know, 16 days to get to it. So I don't know how January is going to go, but I wanted to start the vlog and we'll see what happens. I want to try to finish this by the end of the week. I'm almost halfway through, but it's taken me a long time to get to where I am because, like I said, I'm reading it slowly, and it's quite it's not necessarily dense, but it can be boring at times because he'll go on rants about painters and things that I just don't really care for, so it can be quite boring sometimes. But the insights into his mind and his thoughts about the world and all of that is interesting. So I'm going to talk to you again when I have some reading updates, but welcome to the vlog. I really hope you enjoy it, and yeah. Hi friends, happy 4th. I have some reading updates for you, but first I thought we could do the Hello Lovely Boxes trope book pick for December, I believe. I am no longer a rep for Hello Lovely Box, but I still really like their boxes. Like, I still really like their stuff, and I cannot complain about a special edition romance. And the thing that I like about Hello Lovely Box is that not only are they special editions, but sometimes they are romances that I haven't even heard of, or they are new, like, popular romances. So like one month they gave us a romance that I had never heard of. Then the month before that we got a special edition of that one Elizabeth O'Rourke book that's like super popular. New romances, and also hyped romances that I'm excited for. So, and then it also came with some stickers. We love stickers. I like this one and this one. I like them all. They're all cute. All right, so this is the book, another one that I haven't heard of. It's called Hawk. It's Men of Bird's Eye Book 1. And the tagline is, "I'll be your psycho, you can be my straitjacket." Hawk Tanner is not a man of many words, especially if you're a silly girl getting a silly tattoo in his shop. The owner of Birds Eye Tattoo Studio doesn't want you to tip him with your phone number or flirty glances. He's tired of all the wrong women wanting him for all the wrong reasons. Drew Ashby has no time for anything. As a recently divorced single mother, her focus is on finding a job, caring for her daughter, and rebuilding some semblance of a life after hers was wrecked. When Drew lands a job at Birds Eye, sparks don't immediately fly. She can't deny the fact that her boss is a delicious specimen of a man. His tattoo-covered skin might even drive her wild, but his brooding presence and set jaw make him hard to read. That is, until he drops the bad boy persona and starts making moves on her. Kind and caring gestures she doesn't expect. Things turn hot, and just when Drew thinks everything is finally going right, life does what it does best. It throws her a curveball from her past. Birds Eye might not be the family Drew envisioned for herself, but ideals can change in a heartbeat. There's no doubt Hawk is the man she wants, but can he step up and be the man she needs? Interesting. Not a huge fan of the cover design. Like, I like the line art, but I don't like how the words are, like how the words look. I do like the back, but overall I'm not like a super big fan of this special edition. And I'm not, again, a single parent sort of person. But I might have to give it a shot. I think this is the second story in a row they've done where it's single parent, because I think the last one that we got was Shameless or something like that, and I think that's a single father. Now this is a single mother. But it's pretty short, so I might give it a shot. Who knows? Might not be for me, but something that I had never even heard of before. Who knows? I might not love this, but I might fall in love with the series as a whole, because, I mean, tattoo artists. Let's talk about the books that I have been reading, and by that I mean that I have marathoned all the available manga volumes / chapters for Chainsaw Man. So this is pretty hyped. The anime just came out, the season just ended. Manga is something that I'm always interested in, and I've tried it a couple of times, but I never end up like dedicating myself to it, because I always feel like I should be reading something else, and you know, all that negative self-talk. So I have gotten a Viz Media subscription again, and it allows me access to a bunch of different manga, and I made like a whole list and everything, and I started reading Chainsaw Man. This is about Denji, who in the beginning of the story, like in this world, there are devils, and then there are like fiends, which are like people who have taken in parts of devils at some point, and the more the fear of the devil exists, the stronger the devil is. So like the gun devil, obviously fear around guns is really high, so fear around gun devil is very high, so he's very strong. And Denji ends up replacing his heart with the chainsaw devil. So Denji becomes the chainsaw devil, basically. He becomes a devil hunter. He's broached by this like special group, and the ultimate goal of this division is to kill the gun devil. The gun devil is super strong, like I said, and he has been killing a lot. He killed like 1.2 million people in like a couple of seconds. They task Chainsaw Man, Denji, with finding him, because Denji is supposed to be very strong. Now, that is like the general premise of the manga. There's a lot more that goes on, but like I said, marathoned all of it. It's like something like 116 chapters, and like it gets updated weekly, and I read all of them between yesterday and today. Like, I really sat down and just read all of it, and I absolutely loved it. The entire series has been 5-star. I gave the first couple 4 stars, like when I was rating them, because I didn't quite, like I didn't want to give it 5 stars, but like in my heart, the series is a 5-star series. Every other book from 3 on has been 5 stars. The story is impeccable, and once you find out like what's really going on, it's absolutely bonkers. And this series is hilarious. I'm not like a comedy person, and I'm not a very expressive person when it comes to comedy. I have a very dry sense of humor, and I don't really laugh outwardly a lot, and I mean, I was giggling, I was laughing. This manga series slash, I haven't watched the anime yet, but it's so freaking funny. Denji and another character named Power, they're just perfect characters, and you really grow to love like the division, which is all of the hunters together, and all of the characters that you meet, and just so good. Denji himself is so funny. But my camera is going to die, so yeah, 5 stars, like so fucking good. And then I am also in the middle of, I'm 35% of the way through The Last Housewife. I don't know what the hell is going on in this one. In the beginning, the main character she's listening to a true crime podcast, and it's led by a guy that she used to know when she was younger. And he mentions the death of one of her friends who was friends with her in college, who committed suicide, but he doesn't believe that it was a suicide. The circumstances around it match the death of her friend from college. And he says, like, in his podcast episode, if you're listening to this, I can't remember what the main character's name is, but he basically calls her out and says, like, if you're listening to this, get in contact with me because I want to figure out what's happened. So she gets in contact with him, and they decide to go investigate in the town where the college was. 2 different timelines, one when they were in college, and one as her when she's an adult working with Jamie, the podcaster. And they are investigating her current life, so they went to her apartment, and then they discovered that she might be going to this like underground like sex club, like BDSM club, and they're trying to figure out like what really happened to her, because she has the same wounds as the girl who died when they were in college. And then in the college timeline, she is friends with a girl, Laurel, who's the one that committed suicide in adulthood, who, in the way that they met was Laurel was raped at a party. Her, Laurel, Clem, and then they add this 4th roommate in named Rachel. And the part that we're at, we have met Rachel's father, and he is a really, you know, rich guy, really powerful, has a lot of confidence, very charismatic, and he is, I'm assuming, forming a cult. Because I knew that this, or I had read in a review that this was, I don't know if it's necessarily a fictionalized version of the Sarah Lawrence cult case, but I think it has very similar details. I don't really know much about that one. All I know is it's about a guy who starts a sex cult using his daughter's friends, and that's kind of where we're going with this. He has like basically invited them over. He's flirted with our main character and like touched her and said things to her that made her feel special, and he was like, you can call me daddy, you can call me by your dad's name, like just weird shit. And not weird shit in like a romantic way, like if this was a romantic couple, but like groomy shit for a man that has bad intentions. She is recounting all of that to Jamie in the present, because I guess she thinks that there is a connection to whatever happened with the sex cult and what led Laurel to being killed in the present, because I guess she thinks that whatever happened in the cult like messed Laurel up, and now she went to this sex club looking for something and it got her killed. I'm not really sure. It's good. I read this author's like most popular book, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and I liked the writing, but the story wasn't really for me. It's like dark academia, but it's really not. It's like a thriller, and it's just a lot of like drama, and it wasn't really what I was looking for. It was like a very mid book for me. So I'm hoping that this one will improve. Already I'm way more gripped by the story than I was in the first one. I didn't make it any further in the Journals of Sylvia Plath, but I made it 300 pages into the Letters of Vincent van Gogh. And my feelings have changed a little bit in regards to this. I think in my intro clip I was talking about how annoying and hypocritical he is, and it comes to light about maybe in the last 20-ish pages that Theo, his brother, who was an art dealer, who was his art dealer, hasn't been trying to help Vincent, but he has been bankrolling Vincent's life, and Vincent will send him paintings and stuff, and his brother will basically like blow it off and tell him it's not good enough and he needs to get better or it'll never sell. And he's been doing that to Vincent this entire time, and then he's been using the funds that he's been giving Vincent as sort of like a manipulation. So Vincent will have a fight with someone in his life, or he will be making romantic decisions that Theo doesn't like, and he will kind of force Vincent to go on whatever path Theo wants him to go on, because he's kind of, you know, financially dependent on Theo. And because we don't get Theo's letters, it's hard to discern that in the beginning. Like, you don't really know that's happening. Just saw him as this like spoiled child who was getting bankrolled and had a family that didn't really understand like his way of life, but that he was surrounded by people that loved him or whatever. And I still do stand by some of that. I think that he's kind of lost a little bit in who he wants to be, and he's very set in what he wants his life to look at, and he has very strong opinions about people that live differently than he does, or people that don't understand the way that he lives. So his family is very religious, and they don't agree with him being a painter, and he's been bouncing around from relationship to relationship, and so they just have general issues with him, and he kind of looks down on them and thinks that they're like, they don't understand the meaning of life, and that they're sheltered, and they're all shallow and trying to maintain this way of life that's just shallow and fiction, and just, he's just very judgmental in the way that he but he criticizes them for being the same way. So there are parts of his personality that I think are very hypocritical, but like, we're human, you know, we're human, and a lot of us have issues seeing our own flaws, and we have strong beliefs just like he does about his own life and how he wants that to go. Through discovering that Theo was sort of manipulating him, it sheds a new light on some of his behavior, because he'll have these moments where he's trying to suppress and just keep the peace with his family, because that's kind of what Theo has forced him to do, and then he will explode on them, and Theo will not, we obviously don't get Theo's words, so I can't say like in so many words that he does threaten him, but it'll take a couple of days. Like Vincent will write a letter saying like, yeah, I got your letter about you berating me for this incident. I don't understand why you're always on our father's side. Like, he says these horrible things to me. I don't get why you always side with him and tell me that I have to make up with him when I don't. Like, I don't have to have a relationship with him if I don't want to. We'll get a couple of days later where Vincent's like, you know, you're right. You know, it's my fault. Like, always taking the blame and always kind of changing his opinion. If you don't get the other side of that and see why he's changing his opinion so much, you might, as I did, feel like he's just doing it to get funded. And there is a letter where he says like, the reason that I'm taking your money is because you're saying that you know, you'll fund me and my art will get better, and then one day you'll help sell my paintings, and if you're not going to do that, then I don't even want your money. Like, you can keep your money. That doesn't mean anything to me because it's not helping me in any way. I would rather be poor and have nothing to my name and be homeless than taking your money for nothing, like for no end goal, for me not to better my life in any way, for me not to better my art. And so he has that letter where he basically says like, I want to terminate our relationship because I don't think that you're beneficial. I don't think you or the family has the best of intentions for me, especially Theo. He's very stern with Theo, and this causes sort of a toxic back and forth between them for several years. Vincent has these very romantic ideas about love and relationships and women, and what I'm assuming are pretty progressive views on women and relationships for, you know, the late 1800s, but he also treats people in general, but mostly women, like shit. He sort of uses them in a self-righteous way and then discards them. He's a flawed human for sure. He was a flawed human for sure, and he was infuriating, but also it's like heartbreaking to read the things that he's gone through. there isn't a lot of discussion about his illness, because you are reading just his letters. You get occasional letters from him to somebody else, but it's mostly just letters from him to Theo. And not only do we not know if there are letters missing, but we only get what Vincent wants Theo to know. And so he'll mention that he's had attacks, or that he has bad days, or he'll make mentions of like feeling sorrowful and things like that, but he was of the mindset that mental illness doesn't make an artist better, and that they don't put their mental illness into art, or something along those lines. So he didn't feel like his art was helped by his mental illness, which is a not common thought, and so he felt like that was independent of his art. So there's not a whole lot of mention of how he's feeling. He'll mostly mention in a letter that, oh, you know, weeks past I was feeling bad, but it's mostly just focused on him being poor, his art and how it's improving, and his family struggles. So there are definitely moments where I've considered like just setting this down, because there are chapters, there are letters rather, that are boring to read, quite frankly, because he'll go on tangents about art and who he likes and what influenced his art and stuff like that. There are chapters that are definitely pretty about, or there are letters rather, if I say chapter I mean letter, that are definitely like where he's going into detail about his surroundings and how beautiful it is, which is fantastic and great to read. But then you have entire letters of him talking about artists that he really enjoys and why he doesn't like other artists, and, you know, saying that these artists have no soul in their stuff, and, you know, stuff like that. And I'm just not really into art like he's talking, especially stuff that he's referencing I don't know anything about. Like, I don't know what art he's talking about. I recognize some of the books that he mentions, but mostly I'm kind of clueless as to what he's referencing. So those letters are particularly boring, and I tend to skim those and then go on to the letters from that are talking about, you know, his thoughts about life and what's going on with his family and like how he's doing and things like that. So I haven't read any more of the Journals of Sylvia Plath because I do want to finish this first. So my camera is gonna shut off again, but because I've been talking. Okay, so I think that's time. That's a sign to be done. But I'm gonna finish probably this, and then we'll talk about the Journals of Sylvia Plath once I get into that one. But I started my period today, so I want to lay in bed and cry and eat lots of chocolate and watch people play video games. So that's probably what I'm gonna do, but we'll talk again. Okay friends, happy January 5th. If you are wondering why my Christmas tree is still up, you'll be seeing this in July, August, September. I'm never taking my tree down. We don't have anywhere to store it, so it's just there. We just have a Christmas tree in our kitchen for now until the end of time. I ended up finishing the letters of Vincent van Gogh. I ran out of tabs in these particular colors. At the end I had to just like dog ear. And I don't have many new and interesting ideas from the 10 minutes of clips that I had for you last time. Okay, I can't find it, and I don't want to spend any more time searching for it, but it essentially is from her sister talking about Vincent, and it's something along the lines of like, he makes it hard to remember the good things about him, and that is kind of a testament to Vincent as a person. He is he's flawed like everybody else, but he had a way of making every relationship in his life end in turmoil. And I think a lot of it had to do with just him being not a happy person, not knowing what he wanted to do with his life, not fulfilling what he felt like was his purpose. And so every relationship would end badly for him. And so he was unhappy, and then he would find joy in new people, and he would sort of like immerse himself in these new relationships, and then they would fall through because it ended badly, and then he would be back to loneliness. And I think that's the like most human experience ever, especially for someone that is dealing with mental illness. I think someone who has suffered in the way that Vincent did can relate to pushing other people away, not knowing how to have healthy relationships, and just a feeling of confinement and not knowing where to turn or how to deal with people. I didn't rate this. Again, I don't rate nonfiction, but I'm glad that I read it. Like I said, there were definitely some portions of it that I just didn't care for in regards to art and stuff, but he had some interesting insights, and he was just a very human person, if that makes sense. Like, he just embodied the human experience. I also finished the audio book for The Last Housewife. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. This is a very big departure from When In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. Very different tonally. This is incredibly dark. Ashley Winstead does not shy away from very disturbing things. This deals a lot with abuse, manipulation, power imbalance, everything. She basically in the past is in a cult, and in the future she's investigating a cult and kind of ingratiates herself in this cult. And it's tough. Like, it's, the whole cult is centered around kind of like a NXIVM-esque sex cult where women are subservient to men, and they are just there for the pleasures of men, and women aren't given any agency. But you're seeing it from a woman's point of view in the past, of a woman that was in the cult, and kind of how she got roped in, and then also you're seeing her trying to help women in the cult in the future, or in the present rather, and why they're in it, and all of that. So yeah, it was good. I will say, like, the middle bit dragged a little bit. I think it lost a little bit of steam, because we weren't really getting chapters in the past, and we weren't really getting much investigation, so I felt like the middle dropped off a little bit. But truly stunning, truly amazing. Ashley Winstead's writing is fantastic, and this is very, very dark. I would recommend it if you can handle the darker topics. I'm assuming if you are watching my channel, you are not new to dark stories, but yeah, very, very good, and I would highly recommend it. It was a good listen, and I would definitely pick up more from this author if they're more in this vein than When In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. Hi friends, so I thought we could talk about what I'm currently reading while I put all of my library books on this shelf. First, let's go over what I got while I'm putting them on the shelf. So we will start with the books that I didn't talk about in my 24-hour readathon, because this is sort of the same haul. I got A Psalm for the Wild-Built, which is like a cozy sci-fi. Next up we have The Water Dancer. This is about a boy who is a slave, and he is trying to get his family back together. He escapes and trying to get his family back together. This is about 12 characters from native communities all coming together, all traveling to the big Oakland powwow. We have Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which is about a cafe where you can travel back in time. We have Almond, which is about a boy who is he's unable to feel things, but he has a friend who he befriends someone, they have a close bond, and that friend is in danger. Tin Man, which is about two friends and they meet again 12 years later, and it's the story between the two in those 12 years. Empire of Wild, which is about a indigenous woman who has lost her family, her husband. She discovers him as a preacher and he claims to not remember who she is. Fevered Star, which is the sequel to Black Sun, which is a fantasy series. The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. This follows a group of women who all go to the same church, who are exploring themselves, their lives, etc. The Stationery Shop, which is a fiction story with a love story at its center, and they are separated, and it's like the years of strife of them trying to get back together. Time is a Mother. This is the second book to On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous. It is letters from them to their mother after she has passed. Or poems, not letters. The Five Wounds, which is about a family brought together by a new baby being birthed by a 15-year-old. So those are all of the new books that I haven't talked to you about, but I am 60-ish% of the way through Sword Heart, and I'm actually loving it. I have read one other book by this author, and then I also DNF'd a book by them. But this one is a really funny, whimsical story about a woman in the beginning of the story who is, her husband is deceased, and she was taking care of his great uncle, and then his great uncle passes away, and now his family is trying to marry her off her ex-husband's or her dead husband's cousin. She tries to kill herself with an ancient sword that's hanging above her bed, and when she unsheathes it, it kind of releases this human man who is set out to protect her. They go on an adventure together to get her inheritance so that she doesn't have to marry the guy. And it's really funny, really whimsical. It's like a cute little cozy fantasy. And the heroine is so funny. She just rambles and rambles. That's how she gets out of like sticky situations, is she just talks her head off and doesn't shut up until people just like become so confused by her rambling that they just like give up. It's hilarious. There is a romance between her and the guy that came out of the sword. He was a warrior of some sort, and he's been in the sword for a really long time. And then there's also a priest that comes along on their journey, and an owl, I think, and a talking owl. It's fantastic. I love it. Very funny, very fun, and I'm really enjoying it. So I haven't read anything else because I'm reading stuff for another video, but I thought I would update you on that one and give you a little library haul. So Okay friends, since we last talked, I finished Tin Man. This is a very short little novella. It is about 200 pages, and this is following two different points of view. We have Ellis and Michael, and Ellis is the beginning portion of the book, and then Michael is the second portion of the book. And it starts off with them as friends, and they have a budding romantic relationship, and then one of them ends up in a long-term marriage, basically just becomes a friendship. And this is talking about the years in between when their friendship fell off and how they became friends and just like their lives together. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. It wasn't as emotionally impactful as I wanted. I think it was trying way too hard to be like a literary fiction, if that makes sense, like a literary novel. It was trying a little too hard for that, and I think it lost a little of the emotional impact. I will say Michael's parts are like a diary from him, because he is not in the present timeline and it's all past timeline with Michael. So his diary, his journal entries are hard to read because he's dealing with illness, he's dealing with death of a loved one from AIDS, and a bunch of different things, like finding himself an identity and kind of becoming who he wants to be and finding his place in the world before he could possibly die. And so it is emotional in that aspect, just like as an empathetic person who that's always hard to read, but it didn't quite pack the emotional punch in regards to the lasting impact of the story that I wanted. So it's not quite what I was looking for, but I decided not to rate it just because I don't know how to like qualify this. I don't know what I would give the story. Like, it sounds like I didn't enjoy it because I'm only talking about the like more negative aspects of the story or the things that didn't work for me, but it was a well-structured story, and it's easy to get through because it's so short. The writing is very concise, it's accessible, but it just didn't have like a lasting impact that I wanted. So I am now starting two books that I don't have with me, so I can't fully dive into them, but we will talk when I am further into them. I haven't gotten any more into Sword Heart since I last updated you. Let me check. I am, yeah, still 66% of the way through, so we will talk again when I have read something. It is January 14th, so. Okay friends, I have quite a many updates for you because I have just been reading my little heart out this weekend. But my first reading update for you is that I finished Sword Heart yesterday, and I did end up giving it 4 stars. I think this story was absolutely delightful. I loved the romantic relationship, and it was just like a fun little adventure story, very like cozy, and just like a lot of traveling, and very, very cute. The romantic relationship, I'd say, would be like, I would say is like the most standout part of the story, and I really, really enjoyed it. I can't remember which order I read this in, so we're gonna go with this one first. I finished A Psalm for the Wild-Built. This is a pretty short sci-fi book about a non-binary character, Dex. And in the beginning of the story, they are a monk, and they decide that they want to live a more transitory life in nature, so they decide to change to a tea monk. And they have a tea wagon that they go around to different villages, and they brew teas based on what that person needs at the time, traveling to a remote part of nature where there is said to be robots. The robots in this world kind of gained sentience, and I don't know quite how many, it just says centuries ago, they decided that they didn't want to work alongside humans anymore, so they left, and humans abided by that decision. And they now have just a small section of the world, and then the rest of the world, they're on like a Mars planet, Mars type planet, or a moon type planet rather. The rest of the world has been like left back to nature. And so they decide that they are gonna go off on an adventure. The tea wagon is not doing it for them, so they go off to nature to go to this temple that they assume has been abandoned, to kind of, you know, rediscover themselves. And they run into a robot along the way that is trying to discover how humans have fared since robots left, and it is only like 150 pages. It's very short. I gave this 4 stars. I'm very, very excited to continue. This is just very sweet and very quiet, and it's a lot of discussions around humanity and your purpose, and there's some really great quotes in this. Why do we assign so much purpose to us as humans? Why is it never enough for humans to just live? Why do we have to have like this greater purpose when we look at animals who are just going about living their daily lives, and we don't, when they pass, we don't say like you didn't do enough to them. So I'm very excited to read the second one and see how this little story wraps up. Very cute. If you are looking for like a little sweet, cozy sci-fi, I would recommend picking it up. I then read the Book of Cold Cases. I was hesitant to pick this up because I have read 2 other books by this author. I read The Sundown Motel, which I absolutely loved, one of my favorite like thriller mysteries, and then I also read The Broken Girls earlier in the year, and I didn't love it. So I was a little concerned about this one going in. Something that I really enjoy about Simone St. James's mysteries is they always have this sort of like ambiguous paranormal element to it, and in this one in particular, this follows Shay, and it's set with between 2 different timelines. It is in 1977 and 2017, and Shay runs a true crime blog, and in the beginning of the book, she is a receptionist at a doctor's office, and a woman in their small town that was accused of murdering 2 men in the 70s is a patient there, and so she decides that this unsolved case of these 2 men, she wants to try to take it on and, you know, post about it on her blog and all that. So she sets up an interview with that woman, and she tracks the story. Like I said, it bounces between 1977, when we are experiencing the killings, and what is her name? Beth, and her life back then, and then present day when we're trying to unravel the mystery. I really enjoyed this. I did end up giving it 4 stars. I didn't love it quite as much as I love The Sundown Motel, but it was definitely way better than The Broken Girls. So Simone St. James has, you know, redeemed herself, but this was fantastic. The atmosphere was amazing. You spend a good portion of the story talking about this like haunted mansion that is on these cliffs that like, it's like a straight drop down into the ocean with a lot of rocks. It's always rainy and kind of gloomy, and I mean, it was just a very well told story. This house might be haunted, and there are ghosts, and just very interesting, and there's this element of like this femme fatale, and Beth herself is a very interesting character. You don't know how much you're being manipulated about or what's really the truth, and it was really good mystery. And I enjoyed the twist at the end. I enjoyed the ambiguity. And then lastly, the thing that I just finished is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. I didn't rate this because even though it is fiction, this felt very personal, very like non-fiction-esque, so I just decided not to rate it. But it is a collection of short stories about Black women and girls and their relation to churches and God and people in their family that believe, even if they don't necessarily believe. There are several stories of sapphic couples, and there's also like, you know, family dynamics that are hard to deal with, and grief and mother-daughter relationships, and I definitely enjoyed some stories more than others. In particular, I am just a romance girly, so the more romantic stories I really enjoyed. In particular, my favorite was How to Make Love to a Physicist, which is about a woman who meets a guy at a like conference, and she has to sort of work on herself to make this relationship lasting and to like better herself. And all the short stories had some sort of message or some sort of impact, but some of them were short, some of them were longer, most of them were around like 10 pages long, and yeah, it was good. Now I am currently reading Mistborn. I'm taking this about a chapter at a time. Like, I'll pick up and I'll read a chapter, so I'm only on chapter 2, but I have already read this story before. I'm familiar with Brandon Sanderson's writing. I've read several of his books, but I am still just taking this like as slow as I want. And then I'm also currently reading The Water Dancer. I actually haven't started this yet because I just finished The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, and I'm reading a book for another video, but this is about Hiram Walker, who was born into slavery, and his mother gets sold away, and it's his story trying to bring his family back together. It is quite large. It is a little over 400 pages, and I'm excited to get into this one. But that is the reading update that I have for you. I probably will read these two until I finish one of them, and then I'll pick something else up, but I have to read books for another video. But I thought I would give you that little update. So we'll talk again. Okay, friends, I have read a book that I want to talk to you about because it's so fucking good. It might be one of my favorite romances of the year already. I finished 7 Days in June. So this follows two different timelines. In the present, we are following a single mother who is an erotica writer, and she really wants to branch out. And the hero is also a writer. He writes more literary fiction, and they end up meeting again after a bunch of years. And we're also flashing back to their past, where they spent 7 days together when they were like 17 or 18. And it's stunning. It is so beautiful and heart-wrenching. The relationship is by no means like fluffy and cute. Like, they're dealing with substance abuse, neglectful parents, a lot of trauma and like hard shit, and they just make an absolutely beautiful couple. Like, soulmate level relationship, soulmate level romance. Absolutely beautiful. Like, I fully believed that these people could have spent 14 days together and still be in love. Like, they have a love that transcends. And the story itself, I think, is relatable on so many notes. And it's hard to read. It's very hard to read. There are some moments where I was like, this is a lot. Especially when we're in the past. There's a lot of self-mutilation, there's talks of suicide, there is abuse, every type of abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, parental neglect, heavy amounts of substance abuse, a lot. And it is so good. It is so well done. My one tiny complaint is that I wish that we had eliminated some of the other points of view and just stuck with the hero and the heroine, because there were points of view of the heroine's daughter and some like other people in their life and like her mother and things like that. That helped the plot itself, but I wish that we had had more time with our couple, because like I said, they only spend 7 days together in the past and in the present, and I think that if we had eliminated those other points of view that I didn't feel like were too much of a help for the story, we could have spent a little bit more time with, even if it was only like a page more with our couple. I would have loved it so much. But it's definitely heavy, and the characters are going through a lot. I would say the main two things that the heroine is dealing with is her chronic pain, and also trying to recreate her life and put some sort of like happy spin on her life for her daughter, and show her daughter that she can overcome anything and be whoever she wants to be, and overcome the things that she went through when she was a child with her mother and her mother's boyfriends and things like that. And then the hero is definitely going through similar things. He was in and out of foster care. He had a lot of instances of self-abuse for attention, and he had a substance abuse issue, mostly alcohol. When they were young, there's talks of like heroin and things like that, but he is a recovering alcoholic, and he's also dealing with the things that that were troubling him in his past. So a lot of heavy shit. It's very, very good, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, obviously, and it's one of those books that you read and you're just like, wow, 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 this is the book, you know, this is like exactly what I am looking for, and I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. That is the update. I don't have any other updates for you. I've just been reading other things for other videos. It is the 20th of January, so I don't have anything else to read for other videos for the rest of the month, so I'll be focusing on my reads for this video. I will say that I realized that one of my books that I had checked out from the library was due to my library today, and so I decided that I was going to give it a shot, and I made it about 20 pages in, and I'm just not interested. It's like a Groundhog Day situation. In the beginning, the first chapter, she witnesses her son commit a crime that results in someone dying, and she wakes up the next morning and it's the day before, and then the next morning it's the day before, so she has to go back to the point where this crime was set in place and change it, and I'm not interested, if I had to be completely honest, in that plot line. So we'll talk again when I've read something. Hi friends. Okay. Happy 23rd. So I have finished a couple of things, really just one thing, I think, because I'm at home, because I'm sick, because I have a shit immune system, and I also have IBS. So I finished The Water Dancer. I ended up giving this 4 stars. This is very, very beautiful, very prose heavy. It is about Hiram, who is a slave who, through a series of events, ends up becoming an agent for the Underground Railroad. I would say 50% of this novel is about him traveling to different people needing the Underground Railroad and working with them, learning their stories, and getting them where they need to be. We also have the inclusion of like a magical realism element. I don't want to like reveal to you what it is, but he has this ability, but with this ability he lost the memory of his mom. So you have him using this ability, and then also trying to remember his mother. And it harkens back to his lineage. It has a heavy emphasis on characters and learning their backstory. We have a huge cast of characters from the very beginning. I mean, he's living on this plantation, and we're following him doing his, daily tasks with the other enslaved people. He is also the son of the plantation owner. So that affords him some different circumstances than the people that he's close with. And then he falls in love, and some things happen with that. And again, he becomes an agent for the Underground Railroad. And I like how this story kind of comes full circle, and it does have a hint of hope to it, and also this understanding that like the work is never done and we have a long way to go from the end of this story, and we still have a long way to go. Very, very well done. The inclusion of the magical realism elements, this ability that he has, was a little clunky in some places, and I wish we had gotten a little bit more understanding as the story went on. But I think given the story, and given that Hiram doesn't really have a lot of connection to his family or anybody in his family that would understand, and this ability and his lineage is sort of like a myth, it makes sense that we get it how we get it. It just felt a little clunky in some places, but yeah. And then I am also about 118 pages into Mistborn. Like I said, this is a reread for me. This follows Ven and Kelsier, and in the beginning of the book, Kelsier is a Ska, and they are essentially enslaved peoples, and he was sent off to this like prison, this mining prison essentially, where they send Ska, and he was betrayed and they sent him there, and he snaps, capital S, and he comes into his Mistborn abilities. And in this world there are people called Mistings who are able to use metals to do certain things, using metals to propel your to essentially fly, or to manipulate people's emotions, things like that. And Mistborns are people that have access to all abilities, and Kelsier is a Mistborn. In the beginning of the story, he catches wind of Vin, who is a street urchin. Like, she was raised with her brother raised her and then abandoned her, and now she lives with a gang where she kind of is the where the gang leader uses her abilities to help him, you know, con people. And she ends up getting caught by the government using her misting abilities, her Mistborn abilities. And he brings her into, Kelsier, you know, intercepts them catching her and brings her into this plan that he has in motion to overthrow the final empire, which is the government, the ruling government. And the emperor of this empire is said to be immortal. So he has set in place this plan to lead a Ska rebellion in which the empire will be overthrown, with the eventual intention of him killing the emperor and getting revenge for killing his wife and also imprisoning him. So that is like the bare bones of the story. We basically have just been introduced to Kelsier's plan at this point. And then Vin is going to eventually, she's going to go undercover as a lady in high society so that they can sow some seeds of discord amongst the people. Like I said, this is a reread for me. And there's a lot of stuff that I didn't catch the first time I read it. I think I just read it so quickly that I just wasn't really paying attention to a lot of stuff. So I'm glad that I've decided to reread it. I'm reading a lot of fantasy at one time, and so I'm kind of chomping at the bit to read something else. I probably will finish Mistborn and then move on to another book, maybe a library book. I don't really know. I just know I'm kind of tired of fantasy right now. This isn't like particularly fantasy heavy, but it is a heavy story. So I just want something easy breezy cover girl. So I'm going to probably get back in bed. I'll probably continue watching some YouTube videos that I have been doing all morning. I tried to do like a little bit of like life admin stuff and I just don't feel good. So I'm probably going to get back to watching YouTube videos in bed because yeah. So I will talk to you again when I have finished something or started something and have some thoughts about something. Eventually, I'm going to have to figure out how to end these clips so I'm not saying the same thing over and over again. But today is not that day. So, okay. Okay, friends. I have an update for you. It is the 27th of January. And I have 4 book updates for you. And then I'll probably close out the vlog here because it is getting quite long. And then if you are interested in any of the books that I finish between now and then, the end of January, you'll have to watch my wrap up. First up, I finished, I don't know what I finished first. Okay, we'll start with Almond. This is about a young boy in Korea who has alexithymia, I think is how it's pronounced. And basically he can't feel emotion. And in the beginning of the book, his mother and his grandmother put up little signs on the walls to like tell him like this is how you should feel, and they practice like how to be normal in social situations and stuff. And then their family suffers a tragedy and he's sort of left alone, and then he befriends a kid in his neighborhood who is kind of a very different kid than him. This child feels a lot. He's been through a lot. They've both been through a lot, but this child has been through a lot in a different way, and they spark up this unlikely friendship, and then the main character kind of falls in love, and it's sort of just like him growing up. I have been reading a lot of translated work, and I have never felt like a culture is so important to the reading experience, or understanding the culture is so important to the reading experience. Every book is influenced by the culture that it's written in. So there's obviously nuances that you're going to miss. There's a lot of like topics in here discussed that I feel like would have been more impactful if I understood Korea a little more, and I understood the nuances and the way that children are raised in Korea and things like that, and just like their social structure. It wasn't my type of story. I already don't like coming of age stories or stories about kids, really. So I did end up giving this 3 stars. I think my one critique of it, besides it just not really being like for me, which is not a critique, is the ending felt very odd. The conflict felt weird, and then the resolution of the conflict also felt weird. So I'm glad that I read it, because I, you know, always am trying to diversify my reading. I always want to try to read translated works, so I'm glad that I gave it a shot. It's just not necessarily my type of story. Then I read Time is a Mother. This is a poetry collection by Ocean Vuong after the death of his mother. Poetry I don't think is for me. Poems are not my thing. There was a lot of this that I just was like, okay. I think Ocean Vuong has gorgeous writing, but poetry is just not for me. So I then ended up getting about 70 or 80 pages into Before the Coffee Gets Cold before I decided to DNF this. I decided to DNF it for now because I am going to pick up the audiobook, but the reading experience was not for me. So this is basically about a cafe in Tokyo where you can go back in time for the duration of a cup of coffee. You have to drink the cup of coffee before it gets cold, and if you don't, then you can't come back as a living being. And this is like little stories of people that have gone back in time and like what they've done. And this author, the way that they write women, very much giving like men writing women. Heavy emphasis on like boobs and appearance and how that appearance affects her life. Just like saying shit about a woman's subconscious that like women don't really think, and that it makes it very obvious that this man is trying to write a woman. And then her story was kind of boring, and then we get into the second story, and it's also pretty drawn out. So I'm gonna try to read the audiobook just because I think it's gonna be a more seamless experience. I will say, if this has a story in which someone has Alzheimer's, that's like a kicker for me. That's like, I can read anything. I can read the most disgusting, depraved, horrible shit and be fine, but I can't read stories about Alzheimer's. And people have cried at this, and that's like one of the most recognizable themes in a book that I can think would make people cry. So we'll see how this one goes when I get the audiobook, but it's like a 20-week wait, so. And then the last thing that I read was There, There. This is a pretty short little novel, and it follows a group of 12 people as centered around the Oakland powwow and how they all relate to each other and their lives leading up to the powwow, the effect that this powwow has on their lives going forward when a tragedy happens. Yeah, it was good. I decided not to rate it, and I think that's what I'm gonna do as I'm getting more comfortable with literary fiction, as I'm kind of deciding what I do and don't like and what works for me and what doesn't work for me. I will say this did make me emotional because of the thing that happens. Like, it's quite, the thing that happens about halfway through is quite emotional. There are some quotes in here that I felt like mentioning, and they're quite long. We have, one of our characters has gone to a conference to talk about suicide in native populations, specifically with like youth. And this speaker says, what I'm here to talk about is how our whole approach since day one has been like this. Kids are jumping out of the windows of burning buildings, falling to their deaths. And we think the problem is that they're jumping. This is what we've done. We've tried to find ways to get them to stop jumping, convince them that burning alive is better than leaving when the shit gets too hot for them to take. We've boarded up the windows and made better safety nets to catch them, found more convincing ways to tell them not to jump. They're making the decision that it's better to be dead than gone, than to be alive in what we have here, this life, the one we made for them, the one they've inherited. And we're either involved and have a hand in each of their deaths, just like I did with my brother, or we're absent, which is still involvement. Just like silence is not silence, but is not speaking up. But how do we instill in our children the will to live? At these conferences, in these offices, in the emails, in the community events, there has to be an urgency, a do whatever at any cost sort of spirit behind what we do. Or fuck the programs, maybe we just send the money to the family themselves, who need it and know what to do with it, since we all know what the money goes towards, salaries and conferences like this one. I'm sorry, I get paid out of that shit too, and actually, shit, I'm not sorry. This issue shouldn't be met with politeness and formality. We can't get lost in the career advancements and grant objectives, the day-to-day grind, as if we have to do what we have to do. We choose what we do, and in the choices, and in that choice comes the community. We are choosing for them, all of them. That's what these kids are feeling. They have no control. Guess what kind of control they do have? We need to be about what we're always saying we're about. And if we can't, and we're really just out about ourselves, we need to step aside. Let someone else from the community who really cares, who will really do something, let them come in and help. Fuck all the rest. And then there's like a interlude between before the powwow happens and after, like, you know, the powwow starting. It says, the wound that was made when white people came and took all that they took has never healed. An unattended wound gets infected, becomes a new kind of wound, like the history of what actually happened became a new kind of history. All these stories that we haven't been telling all this time, that we haven't been listening to, are just part of what we need to heal. Not that we're broken, and don't make the mistake of calling us resilient. To not have been destroyed, to not have given up, to have survived is no badge of honor. Would you call an attempted murder victim resilient? When we go to tell our stories, people think we want it to have gone different. People want to say things like sore losers and move on already. Quit playing the blame game. But is it a game? Only those who have lost as much as we have see the particularly nasty slice of smile on someone who thinks they're winning when they say get over it. That is the thing. If you have the option to not think about or even consider history, whether you learned it right or not, or whether it even deserves consideration, that's how you know you're on board the ship that serves hors d'oeuvres and fluffs your pillows, while others are out at sea swimming or drowning or clinging to little inflatable rafts that they have to take turns keeping inflated. People short of breath who have never even heard of the word hors d'oeuvres or fluff. Yes, this is a good story. There's a heavy emphasis on this collection of modern natives, the idea that native lives are presented as these historic pieces. Modern native stories aren't really told, aren't really listened to. So I think this is a really good little story. I did end up DNFing for now the Mistborn book. I was just kind of tired of epic fantasy. And then I do have some reads for other videos that I need to knock out in the next couple of days, but I think these are the books that I'm going to focus on next. We have The Five Wounds, which is about a family that comes together around a teen pregnancy. We have The Empire of Wild, which is about a woman who loses her husband. He goes missing, and then she discovers him in a revival tent, and he says that he doesn't remember her. And then we have Black Cake, which is about two siblings whose mother has died, and she leaves them a black cake and a voice note with her past, and also a sibling that they might not have known about. So these are going to be what I focus on, but I likely won't mention them until my next vlog. I have all of my vlogs until June planned out. So if I was going to go on the current schedule, it would be a monthly vlog every month until June, and then I would go to weekly reading vlogs. But I'm also considering going to weekly reading vlogs earlier than that. I, for some reason, had this stupid like track in my mind that I could only do like these more themed reading vlogs in a formal setting, and I had to keep my informal reading from my formal reading, and I couldn't like stray from a specific TBR. And I am kind of getting away from that. Like, I like doing my themed videos where I like only read KU and new adult romances, or only read small, you know, that's fun. But I think I want to start reading different stuff in all at once. This is like not a revolutionary idea by any means, but for some reason it's just like an epiphany for me. So either next month I'm either going to have weekly reading vlogs, or I'm gonna go into back into another monthly reading vlog. I haven't decided yet, but that's it for this one. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on anything that I read or what you read in January. I would love to hear it. I would love to know all of the good books that you read in January, what your first book of the month was, first book of the year was. If you don't have anything to say, leave a cat down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you are looking for more content, you can check out my Instagram or my podcast Instagram. You can also check out my podcast on all your favorite streaming platforms. It is a horror podcast. It's a lot of fun. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.